Sharlene, Nagy, Hesse-Biber.
Yes.
Thank you very much for agreeing to answer my questions and spend a little time with us. I'd like you really to talk a little bit about your experience with feminist methods. And I think the first thing I'd like to ask is for you to imagine that I'm starting a research project in feminist research. What advice would you give to me to help me successfully start up and design a feminist project?
Okay, well, I think the first thing I would mention is that really what makes research feminist is really not the methods per se. Feminists use all kinds of methods. They use quantitative methods, qualitative methods, emergent methods, mixed methods. But what's really unique, I think, about feminist research is the perspective. And very often, I think there's a misconception about what feminism, in fact, is. Some people feel it's a unidimensional kind of perspective. And I think the interesting thing to realize is that there are feminisms, not just one feminist point of view. So, and very often, I think one important thing to remember is that you know, there's a reluctance on the part of some folks to want to call themselves feminists because they feel, well, it's the broad burners of the 60s, and you know, feminists are radical and they hate men. And the interesting thing to realize is that feminists come in all shapes and sizes, beliefs. The main core set of things feminists kind of agree upon is issues that deal with getting at subjugated knowledge about women's lives, dealing with women's oppression, and dealing with factors in the environment that oppress women and other groups that are sometimes in the position of feeling very powerless. I think the other thing is the commitment to social change and social justice. So very often when you're embarking on a feminist project, I think one of the things that is important is to also say feminists use tools that other perspectives use in a certain kind of way. So Audre Lorde would say, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools because they're patriarchal tools, they're tools that, you know, you shouldn't touch. And so feminism and feminist perspectives have been thought usually to be qualitative because that's how you get at new knowledge. And I think what's amazing to understand is that if the tools are practiced using the sensitivity of looking at issues of power and balance between researcher and research, listening to respondents, deeply listening without necessarily getting your agenda in, but really deeply listening to the issues of women. I think also the commitment to want to take that research and create some kind of social transformation, so that this kind of work is a kind of calling, it's a kind of commitment to wanting to get at, I often call it excavating, getting at knowledge that wasn't there before, asking questions that deal with women, but not just say women, say what kind of women, tending to issues of difference. Are we talking about white women? Are we talking about women of color? Are we talking about working class women? Not all women are the same. There's that sensitivity to difference, and that sensitivity really to being careful about making statements about a total group. So those are some of the kinds of perspectives one engages in. And I think the most important thing is to understand yourself. Reflexivity in the research process is really critical. Knowing and reflecting on your own biases when you go into a project. There is no view from nowhere. Every researcher comes to a research project with a point of view. Now, a positivist might say, well, you take that point of view and you remain objective. And feminists will say, that is not possible. You can't take your values and throw them out the window and pretend that they're not there. But what is the most important thing, and how objectivity becomes strong objectivity, is the embracing of your values, knowing what your values are, and tending to your agenda in the research process. And the more that you know, the more careful you may be of imposing those values on others. So it's actually in in embracing your own biases that you become more objective. It sounds, it's a very interesting kind of twist and turn on the notion of objectivity itself. So
it's interesting.